The Georgian Spy. Chapter 1, The Assignment. The year was 1795, and the air in London was thick with whispers of revolution and war. The British crown had grown increasingly wary of the unrest spreading through France, where the echoes of the guillotine still reverberated. In this climate of suspicion and subterfuge, Alexander Hawke, a seasoned British spy, was summoned to a clandestine meeting in the heart of the city. The meeting took place in a dimly lit room, hidden away in the basement of a seemingly innocuous bookshop. The smell of aged paper and ink hung in the air as Alexander entered, his sharp eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. At a small wooden table sat his handler, Sir Reginald Carter, a man known for his unyielding dedication to the crown. "Ah, Hawke," Sir Reginald greeted him with a curt nod. "Please, have a seat." Alexander took the offered chair, his mind already racing with possibilities. "What is the assignment, sir?" Sir Reginald leaned forward, his expression grave. "We have received intelligence that the French are planning a significant move against us. Details are scarce, but we believe it involves high-ranking members of their society. Your task is to infiltrate French high society under the guise of an art collector and gather information." Alexander nodded, his face betraying no emotion. "Understood. And my contact in France? You will be working with a local informant, a man who goes by the name of Jacques. He will provide you with the necessary introductions and information. However, there is one individual you must be particularly cautious of," Sir Reginald warned. "And who might that be?" Alexander inquired. "A Contessa Élise de Beauvoir," Sir Reginald revealed, sliding a portrait of a stunning woman across the table. "She is known for her beauty and charm, but also her connections with both French and British sympathizers. We are not sure where her true loyalties lie." Alexander studied the portrait, noting the Contessa's striking features and enigmatic smile. "I will be vigilant." "Good," Sir Reginald replied, standing up. "Your ship leaves for France in 3 days. Prepare yourself, Hawke. The fate of the crown may very well rest in your hands." With that, Alexander left the bookshop, his mind already shifting into the cold, calculating mode of a spy. He had 3 days to assume his new identity, to become the charming and knowledgeable art collector who would seamlessly blend into French high society. The stakes were high, but Alexander Hawke had never been one to shy away from danger. As he walked through the bustling streets of London, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The game of espionage was about to begin, and he was ready to play his part to perfection. The mission ahead was fraught with peril and uncertainty, but one thing was clear: the name Alexander Hawke would soon be whispered in the grand salons of Paris, and his legend would grow ever larger. The Georgian spy was on his way to France, and the world of art, intrigue, and danger awaited him. Chapter 2, The Masquerade. 3 days later, Alexander Hawke found himself aboard a ship bound for France. The journey was uneventful, giving him ample time to immerse himself in the persona of Sir Alexander Hawke, a distinguished British art collector with a discerning eye for rare and exquisite pieces. His wardrobe now included tailored suits, an assortment of fashionable cravats, and a selection of ornate walking canes, each chosen to convey the air of sophistication expected of his new identity. Upon arriving in Paris, Alexander was greeted by the bustling energy of a city in the throes of both revolution and revelry. The streets were alive with the sounds of horse-drawn carriages, street vendors hawking their wares, and the distant strains of music from the grand salons. The contrast between the opulence of the aristocracy and the unrest of the common people was palpable. Alexander's first order of business was to meet his informant, Jacques, who had arranged to rendezvous at a small café tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The café's cozy interior was a haven of warmth and comfort, a stark contrast to the cold, calculating world of espionage. "Ah, Monsieur Hawke," Jacques greeted him with a smile as Alexander took a seat. "Bienvenue à Paris." "Merci, Jacques," Alexander replied, his French flawless. "I trust all is in order." "Indeed," Jacques confirmed, sliding a small envelope across the table. Inside, you will find invitations to several events where you can begin to establish your presence in high society. There is also information on key individuals, including the Contessa Élise de Beauvoir. Alexander accepted the envelope, his mind already processing the details. Tell me about the Contessa. Jacques leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. She is a woman of great beauty and charm, known for her wit and intelligence. She moves effortlessly among the elite, but there are whispers that she has connections on both sides of the conflict. Some say she is a double agent, playing a dangerous game of deception. I will tread carefully, Alexander assured him. And the first event? A gala at the Château de Versailles, Jacques informed him. It is a grand affair, with the most influential members of society in attendance. It will be the perfect opportunity for you to make an impression. With their business concluded, Alexander took his leave, eager to begin his mission. As he made his way through the city, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The grandeur of Versailles awaited, and with it, the chance to immerse himself in the world of art, intrigue, and danger. The night of the gala arrived, and Alexander found himself standing before the opulent Château de Versailles. The grand palace, with its gleaming marble floors and shimmering chandeliers, was a testament to the excesses of the French aristocracy. As he entered the ballroom, he was struck by the dazzling display of wealth and power. Elegantly dressed men and women mingled, their laughter and conversation filling the air. Servants moved discreetly among the guests, offering trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The room was a kaleidoscope of color, with the glittering jewels and sumptuous fabrics creating a scene of unparalleled splendor. It was here, amidst the grandeur of Versailles, that Alexander first laid eyes on Contessa Élise de Beauvoir. She stood near the center of the room, surrounded by admirers, her beauty and grace captivating all who beheld her. Dressed in a gown of deep crimson, she exuded an air of confidence and mystery that drew Alexander's attention like a magnet. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. Élise offered him a subtle, enigmatic smile, and Alexander knew that his mission had truly begun. The game of espionage was in full swing, and he was ready to navigate the treacherous waters of high society to uncover the secrets that lay hidden beneath the surface. As he approached her, the thrill of the challenge coursed through his veins. The masquerade had begun, and Alexander Hawke was determined to play his part to perfection. Chapter 3: The Art of Deception. Alexander Hawke quickly became a fixture in the elite circles of Paris, charming everyone with his keen eye for art and his impeccable manners. Word of the enigmatic British art collector spread like wildfire, and soon he was receiving invitations to the most exclusive events in the city. His cover was flawless, and he played his role to perfection, but his mind was always focused on the true purpose of his mission. As days turned into weeks, Alexander carefully observed the interactions and alliances within high society. He attended galas, art auctions, and private salons, all the while gathering information and weaving a web of contacts. It was during one such event, an auction of rare and valuable artworks, that he found himself standing next to Contessa Élise de Beauvoir once again. The auction house was filled with the elite of Paris, each vying for a piece of history. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation as the auctioneer called out bids. Alexander kept his eyes on the Contessa, who seemed to glide effortlessly through the crowd, her presence commanding attention. When a particularly valuable painting was presented, Alexander saw his opportunity. He raised his paddle, and the bidding war began. The room buzzed with excitement as the bids climbed higher and higher, but Alexander remained composed, his gaze never leaving Élise. Finally, the gavel came down, and the painting was his. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, and Élise approached him with a smile. "Congratulations, Monsieur Hawke," she said, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You have quite the discerning taste." "Thank you, Contessa," Alexander replied, bowing slightly. "Your presence has made this evening even more enjoyable." "Flattery will get you everywhere," she teased, her smile never faltering. "But tell me, what draws you to this particular piece?" Alexander glanced at the painting, a landscape of rolling hills and a distant castle. "It speaks to me of forgotten places and hidden secrets. There is a sense of mystery that I find captivating." Élise's gaze lingered on the painting for a moment before returning to Alexander. "I do believe you and I share an appreciation for the enigmatic." Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a man who introduced himself as Monsieur Renault, a wealthy patron of the arts. Alexander seized the opportunity to discreetly observe the interactions between Élise and Renault. There was a familiarity between them, and Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their relationship than met the eye. As the evening drew to a close, Alexander found himself alone with Jacques in a secluded corner of the auction house. "What do you know of Monsieur Renault?" he asked, his voice low. Jacques nodded thoughtfully. "He is a known sympathizer of the French cause, with connections to key figures in the Revolution. He and the Contessa are often seen together, but the nature of their association remains unclear." Alexander's mind raced with possibilities. Élise's behavior was becoming increasingly suspicious, and he couldn't afford to let his guard down. "Keep a close watch on them both," he instructed. "I need to know where their loyalties truly lie." With their meeting concluded, Alexander made his way back to his lodgings, his mind filled with questions. Élise was an enigma, and every interaction with her only deepened the mystery. Was she a double agent, playing both sides to her advantage? Or was she simply a woman caught in the crossfire of a dangerous game? As he lay awake that night, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that the Contessa held the key to uncovering the secrets that lay hidden beneath the surface of French high society. The art of deception was a delicate dance, and he was determined to master it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of social events and covered meetings. Alexander continued to gather information, always careful to maintain his cover. He attended lavish balls and private gatherings, each encounter bringing him closer to the truth. One evening, as he prepared to attend yet another gala, a message arrived from Jacques. It contained a single word: masquerade. Alexander's heart quickened. The Contessa had invited him to a masquerade ball, a perfect setting for secrets to be revealed and alliances to be tested. With a sense of anticipation, Alexander donned his mask and made his way to the grand ballroom where the masquerade was being held. The room was a sea of masks and costumes, each guest more extravagant than the last. It was a world of intrigue and deception, and Alexander was ready to navigate its treacherous waters. As he entered the ballroom, his eyes searched for Élise. He found her near the center of the room, her mask adorned with feathers and jewels. She stood out even in the midst of such opulence, her presence commanding attention. Their eyes met, and she offered him a knowing smile. The dance of secrets had begun, and Alexander was determined to uncover the truth. In the world of espionage, trust was a rare commodity, and he was ready to play his part to perfection. The masquerade was in full swing, and Alexander Hawke was prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. The game of deception was afoot, and he was ready to master it. Chapter 4, Dance of Secrets. The grand masquerade ball at the Palais Garni was the epitome of opulence and mystery. Masked guests in elaborate costumes mingled under the glittering chandeliers, their identities concealed behind ornate masks. The air was filled with the intoxicating scent of perfume and the soft strains of a string quartet, creating an atmosphere of enchantment and intrigue. Alexander Hawke, disguised in a midnight blue velvet mask and a tailored suit, navigated the crowd with practiced ease. His eyes were constantly scanning the room, searching for any sign of danger or opportunity. He had learned that in the world of espionage, even the most innocuous encounter could hold the key to unraveling a web of secrets. As he approached the center of the ballroom, he spotted Contessa Élise de Beauvoir. Her mask, adorned with feathers and jewels, complemented her gown of deep crimson silk. She was surrounded by admirers, her laughter and charm captivating all who were fortunate enough to be in her presence. Their eyes met, and Élise offered him a subtle, knowing smile. Alexander felt a thrill of anticipation as he made his way toward her, weaving through the crowd with the grace of a seasoned spy. When he finally reached her, she extended her hand, and he took it with a bow. "Monsieur Hawke," she greeted him, her voice smooth and melodious. "What a pleasure to see you here." "The pleasure is mine, Contessa," Alexander replied, his tone equally courteous. "I must say, you are a vision of beauty tonight." "You flatter me," she said with a playful glint in her eye. "Shall we dance?" He nodded, and she led him to the dance floor. As they moved in perfect harmony to the music, Alexander couldn't help but marvel at her grace and poise. It was as if they were the only two people in the room, their every step and movement a silent conversation. "I must admit," Élise murmured, her lips close to his ear, "I find you quite intriguing, Monsieur Hawke. There is an air of mystery about you that I cannot resist." "And I, too, am captivated by you, Contessa," Alexander replied, his voice low. "But I suspect there is more to you than meets the eye." Her smile widened, and she leaned in closer. "Ah, but the same could be said of you. Tell me, what brings you to Paris?" Alexander maintained his composure, careful not to reveal too much. "I am here for the art, of course. Paris is the center of the art world, and I could not resist the opportunity to expand my collection." "And yet," Élise said, her tone conspiratorial, "I sense there is more to your visit. Perhaps you are not just an art collector." Before he could respond, the music swelled, and they twirled gracefully across the dance floor. The moment was charged with tension, and Alexander knew that their dance was a metaphor for the delicate game of espionage they were both playing. As the dance came to an end, Élise gazed into his eyes, her expression unreadable. "We should talk more," she said softly. "There are things I would like to discuss with you, away from prying eyes." Alexander nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I agree. Perhaps we can find a more private setting." Élise led him to a secluded balcony overlooking the gardens of the Palais Garni. The night air was cool and refreshing, a stark contrast to the warmth and energy of the ballroom. They stood in silence for a moment, the city of Paris spread out before them like a shimmering tapestry. "I know why you are truly here, Alexander," Élise said, breaking the silence. "And I know that we are both walking a dangerous path." Alexander turned to her, his expression serious. "What do you mean?" "There are forces at play that neither of us can fully comprehend," she continued. "I am not merely an aristocrat, nor are you simply an art collector. We are both players in a larger game, one that could determine the fate of our nations." Alexander's mind raced with possibilities. Élise's words confirmed his suspicions, but they also raised new questions. "And where do your loyalties lie, Élise?" She looked away, her gaze fixed on the distant city lights. "My loyalties are complicated. I have connections on both sides, and I have my own reasons for doing what I do. But know this, Alexander, I have no desire to see our countries torn apart." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. They turned to see Monsieur Renault, his expression wary. "Contessa, Monsieur Hawke," he greeted them with a nod. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I have urgent matters to discuss with Élise. Alexander felt a surge of frustration, but he concealed it with a polite smile. "Of course, Monsieur Renault. I will leave you to your business." As he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled into a web of intrigue that went far beyond his original mission. Élise was an enigma, and her true intentions remained unclear. But one thing was certain, the game of deception was far from over, and Alexander would need all his wits to navigate the treacherous path ahead. The night was filled with questions and uncertainty, but Alexander was determined to find the answers. The dance of secrets had only just begun, and he was ready to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Chapter 5: The Cryptic Clue. The masquerade had left Alexander with more questions than answers. Élise's cryptic words lingered in his mind, and Monsieur Renault's interruption only added to the enigma. Alexander knew he had to uncover the truth about Élise and her connections. The next morning, he decided to delve deeper into the world of art and secrets. He spent the day visiting various art galleries and museums, always on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary. It was during a visit to a small, unassuming gallery in the Marais district that he stumbled upon a peculiar painting. The artwork depicted a serene landscape, but something about it felt off. Alexander's keen eye for detail noticed subtle, hidden elements within the painting. Intrigued, he decided to purchase the piece and brought it back to his lodgings. Under the soft glow of candlelight, Alexander examined the painting meticulously. He soon discovered a hidden message embedded in the brush strokes, a series of symbols and numbers that seemed to form a code. Alexander's mind raced as he deciphered the cryptic clue. The message led him to a rendezvous point in the outskirts of Paris, near an old, abandoned mansion. The address was unfamiliar to him, but he knew he had to investigate. Donning a dark cloak to blend into the shadows, Alexander set out to uncover the truth. The night was cold and silent as he approached the mansion, its once grand facade now crumbling with age. The moon cast an eerie glow over the scene, and Alexander's senses were heightened, alert for any sign of danger. As he stepped inside, the air was heavy with the scent of decay and neglect. He made his way through the darkened halls, guided only by the faint light of his lantern. The mansion was a labyrinth of forgotten rooms and hidden passageways, and Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Suddenly, a soft rustle caught his attention. Alexander turned to find Élise standing in the doorway, her expression calm and composed. "What are you doing here, Élise?" he demanded, his voice low. "I could ask you the same question, Alexander," she replied, her eyes flickering with amusement. "It seems we are both drawn to the mysteries of this place. You led me here, didn't you?" he accused, holding up the painting. "What do you know about this?" Élise's smile was enigmatic as she stepped closer. "I knew you would find the message. I needed to see if you were truly capable of uncovering the truth." Alexander's frustration grew. "And what truth is that?" she sighed, her demeanor shifting to one of seriousness. "This mansion holds secrets that could change the course of our mission. There are hidden documents here, evidence of a plot that threatens both our nations. I needed someone I could trust to help me find them." "Trust?" Alexander echoed, his skepticism evident. "You still haven't proven where your loyalties lie." Élise met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "I am loyal to the greater good, Alexander. Sometimes that means making difficult choices. If you help me, we can uncover the truth together and prevent a catastrophe." The weight of her words hung in the air, and Alexander found himself torn. He had come to Paris with a clear mission, but the lines between ally and enemy were becoming increasingly blurred. He needed to make a decision, and quickly. "Very well," he said, his resolve firm. "We will find these documents together. But know this, Élise, I will not hesitate to act if I sense betrayal." "Agreed," she replied, her expression determined. "Let us begin." Together, they searched the mansion, their movements coordinated and efficient. They uncovered hidden compartments, secret passageways, and long-forgotten rooms. Each discovery brought them closer to the truth. In a dusty attic, they finally found what they were looking for, a collection of documents detailing a plot to incite rebellion in both France and Britain. The evidence was damning, and Alexander realized the gravity of the situation. This was no ordinary mission, it was a race against time to prevent disaster. As they pored over the documents, Alexander felt a newfound sense of camaraderie with Élise. Their shared goal had forged a tenuous alliance, one built on mutual respect and necessity. The dance of secrets had brought them together, and now they had to navigate the treacherous path ahead. The night was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. With the evidence in hand, Alexander and Élise prepared to confront the forces that threatened their nations. The game of deception was reaching its climax, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The cryptic clue had led them to the heart of the conspiracy, and now they had to ensure that the truth would prevail. The fate of their countries depended on it, and Alexander was determined to see it through to the end. Chapter 6, Cross and Double Cross. The tension in the air was palpable as Alexander and Élise meticulously reviewed the documents they had uncovered. The mansion's dusty attic had become their impromptu war room, the flickering candlelight casting shadows on the pages that detailed the nefarious plot. The stakes were higher than ever, and Alexander knew they had to act quickly. As dawn approached, they decided to leave the mansion and regroup at a safer location. They slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness, their footsteps muffled by the thick fog that had settled over the city. They made their way to a safe house that Jacques had arranged, a discreet apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Once inside, they secured the doors and windows, ensuring they would not be disturbed. The documents were spread out on a table, and Alexander's keen mind worked to piece together the puzzle. Élise watched him, her expression a mix of admiration and concern. "We need to act fast," Alexander said, his voice steady. "If this plot comes to fruition, it could spell disaster for both our nations." Élise nodded in agreement. "We must find a way to alert the authorities without revealing our involvement. If they discover we are working together, it could compromise everything." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Alexander's hand instinctively went to the dagger concealed in his coat as Élise moved to answer. She opened the door a crack, only to find Jacques standing there, his expression urgent. "May I come in?" Jacques asked, his voice low. Élise stepped aside to let him enter. "What is it, Jacques?" "I've received word that there may be a traitor among us," Jacques said, his gaze shifting between Alexander and Élise. "Someone within our ranks has been feeding information to the enemy. We need to be cautious." Alexander's mind raced. The possibility of betrayal added a new layer of complexity to their mission. "Do you have any leads?" he asked. Jacques nodded. "I've intercepted coded correspondence that suggests someone close to us is involved. We need to be vigilant." As they discussed their next steps, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that Élise's behavior had become increasingly suspicious. Her actions and words often seemed to hint at a deeper agenda, one that she had yet to fully reveal. He knew he had to confront her, but he also needed to tread carefully. Later that evening, as the city settled into quiet slumber, Alexander took Élise aside. "We need to talk," he said, his voice firm. "I need to know where your loyalties truly lie." Élise met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I understand your concerns, Alexander, but I assure you, my loyalty is to the greater good. I have no desire to see our nations torn apart." "Then why do I feel like you're hiding something?" he pressed, his frustration evident. "Every time I think I understand you, there's another layer of mystery." Élise sighed, her demeanor softening. "I cannot deny that I have my own motivations, but they are not in conflict with our mission. I believe in what we are doing, and I am committed to seeing it through." Their conversation was cut short by the sudden arrival of Monsieur Renault, his expression serious. "We have a problem," he announced. "Our enemies are aware of our movements. We need to act now if we want to prevent the plot from unfolding." The urgency in Renault's voice left no room for doubt. Alexander and Élise quickly gathered the documents and prepared to leave. They knew that every moment counted, and hesitation could mean the difference between success and failure. As they made their way through the darkened streets, Alexander couldn't help but feel a sense of impending danger. The shadows seemed to close in around them, and he knew they were being watched. The game of deception was reaching its climax, and the stakes had never been higher. Their destination was a hidden safe house where they could regroup and plan their next move. But as they approached, they were ambushed by a group of armed men. A fierce struggle ensued, and Alexander fought with all his strength to protect the documents and Élise. In the chaos, Élise managed to disarm one of their attackers and retrieve a pistol. She fired a warning shot into the air, causing the assailants to scatter. The confrontation left them breathless but unharmed, and they quickly took refuge in the safe house. Once inside, they secured the doors and windows, ensuring they would not be followed. Alexander's mind raced with the events that had just transpired. The ambush had confirmed his worst fears, their enemies were always one step ahead. He turned to Élise, his expression serious. "We need to find out who betrayed us. If there's a traitor within our ranks, they must be stopped." Élise nodded, her determination matching his own. "Agreed. We must uncover the truth, no matter the cost." The night was far from over, and the road ahead was fraught with danger. But Alexander and Élise were united in their resolve. They would find the traitor, stop the plot, and ensure the safety of their nations. The game of deception was reaching its peak, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of their countries depended on it, and Alexander was determined to see it through to the end. The cross and double cross had brought them to this point, and there was no turning back now. Chapter 7, The High-Stakes Auction. The next morning, Alexander and Élise regrouped with Jacques to discuss their plan of action. They had to expose the traitor and stop the impending plot before it was too late. Their investigation led them to an exclusive auction where many of the city's elite would gather. It was the perfect place to gather intelligence and perhaps identify the traitor within their ranks. The auction was held at the opulent Hotel de Crillon, a grand palace-turned-luxury hotel. The ballroom was a dazzling display of wealth and power, with gilded mirrors, crystal chandeliers, and richly adorned guests. The air was thick with anticipation as the attendees awaited the start of the auction. Alexander and Élise arrived together, their presence commanding attention. Alexander wore a tailored suit that exuded sophistication, while Élise was a vision in a gown of deep emerald silk. They blended seamlessly into the crowd, their masks of charm and elegance firmly in place. As they mingled with the guests, Alexander kept a watchful eye on Élise. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, even for a moment. Élise, on the other hand, seemed at ease, engaging in light-hearted conversation with various attendees. The auctioneer began the proceedings, presenting a series of rare and valuable artworks. The bidding wars were fierce, and the stakes were high. Alexander participated strategically, his bids drawing attention and establishing his credibility as an art collector. It was during the auction of a particularly valuable artifact, a golden chalice adorned with intricate engravings, that Alexander noticed something unusual. A group of men, dressed in fine suits, exchanged furtive glances and whispered among themselves. Their behavior was suspicious, and Alexander's instincts told him they were up to something. As the bidding for the chalice escalated, Élise joined the fray, her paddle raised confidently. The room buzzed with excitement as the bids climbed higher and higher. The tension was palpable, and Alexander realized that the chalice held more significance than its monetary value. In a daring move, Alexander placed a bid that exceeded all others, winning the chalice. The room erupted in applause, and Élise's expression betrayed a flicker of surprise. Alexander knew he had to act quickly to uncover the truth. After the auction, Alexander and Élise discreetly made their way to a private salon, where they could examine the chalice without interference. The golden artifact gleamed in the candlelight, and Alexander's keen eyes immediately spotted a hidden compartment within the base. With a deft touch, he opened the compartment to reveal a small, rolled-up parchment. The document contained coded information, and Alexander's heart raced as he deciphered the message. It detailed the next steps of the plot, including key locations and individuals involved. Élise leaned in, her expression serious. "This confirms our suspicions, Alexander. We must act quickly to prevent this plot from unfolding." As they discussed their next move, Jacques entered the salon, his face grave. "We have a lead on the traitor," he announced. "One of our contacts intercepted a message implicating a high-ranking official within our network. We need to confront him immediately." The urgency in Jacques' voice left no room for hesitation. Alexander and Élise gathered the documents and prepared to leave. They knew that every moment counted, and they had to expose the traitor before it was too late. Their destination was a luxurious mansion on the outskirts of Paris, where the traitor was believed to be hiding. As they approached, they were met with resistance from armed guards. A fierce battle ensued, with Alexander and Élise fighting side by side to overcome their adversaries. In the chaos, they managed to infiltrate the mansion and confront the traitor, a high-ranking official who had been feeding information to the enemy. The confrontation was intense, and the traitor's attempts to escape were thwarted by Alexander's quick thinking. With the traitor captured and the documents in hand, Alexander and Élise knew they had struck a significant blow against the enemy's plans. But the mission was far from over. They still had to ensure that the plot would be fully dismantled and that the safety of their nations would be secured. As they left the mansion, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. The high-stakes auction had brought them closer to the truth, but the journey ahead was filled with uncertainty. Alexander and Élise were united in their resolve, determined to see their mission through to the end. The game of deception was nearing its climax, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of their countries depended on it, and Alexander was determined to ensure that justice would prevail. The high-stakes auction had revealed the true depth of the conspiracy, and now they had to dismantle it piece by piece. The night was far from over, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. But Alexander and Élise were ready to confront the forces that threatened their world. The dance of secrets had brought them together, and together, they would navigate the treacherous path to victory. Chapter 7, The High-Stakes Auction. The next morning, Alexander and Élise regrouped with Jacques to discuss their plan of action. They had to expose the traitor and stop the impending plot before it was too late. Their investigation led them to an exclusive auction where many of the city's elite would gather. It was the perfect place to gather intelligence and perhaps identify the traitor within their ranks. The auction was held at the opulent Hotel de Crillon, a grand palace-turned-luxury hotel. The ballroom was a dazzling display of wealth and power, with gilded mirrors, crystal chandeliers, and richly adorned guests. The air was thick with anticipation as the attendees awaited the start of the auction. Alexander and Élise arrived together, their presence commanding attention. Alexander wore a tailored suit that exuded sophistication, while Élise was a vision in a gown of deep emerald silk. They blended seamlessly into the crowd, their masks of charm and elegance firmly in place. As they mingled with the guests, Alexander kept a watchful eye on Élise. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, even for a moment. Élise, on the other hand, seemed at ease, engaging in light-hearted conversation with various attendees. The auctioneer began the proceedings, presenting a series of rare and valuable artworks. The bidding wars were fierce, and the stakes were high. Alexander participated strategically, his bids drawing attention and establishing his credibility as an art collector. It was during the auction of a particularly valuable artifact, a golden chalice adorned with intricate engravings, that Alexander noticed something unusual. A group of men, dressed in fine suits, exchanged furtive glances and whispered among themselves. Their behavior was suspicious, and Alexander's instincts told him they were up to something. As the bidding for the chalice escalated, Élise joined the fray, her paddle raised confidently. The room buzzed with excitement as the bids climbed higher and higher. The tension was palpable, and Alexander realized that the chalice held more significance than its monetary value. In a daring move, Alexander placed a bid that exceeded all others, winning the chalice. The room erupted in applause, and Élise's expression betrayed a flicker of surprise. Alexander knew he had to act quickly to uncover the truth. After the auction, Alexander and Élise discreetly made their way to a private salon, where they could examine the chalice without interference. The golden artifact gleamed in the candlelight, and Alexander's keen eyes immediately spotted a hidden compartment within the base. With a deft touch, he opened the compartment to reveal a small, rolled-up parchment. The document contained coded information, and Alexander's heart raced as he deciphered the message. It detailed the next steps of the plot, including key locations and individuals involved. Élise leaned in, her expression serious. "This confirms our suspicions, Alexander. We must act quickly to prevent this plot from unfolding." As they discussed their next move, Jacques entered the salon, his face grave. "We have a lead on the traitor," he announced. "One of our contacts intercepted a message implicating a high-ranking official within our network. We need to confront him immediately." The urgency in Jacques' voice left no room for hesitation. Alexander and Élise gathered the documents and prepared to leave. They knew that every moment counted, and they had to expose the traitor before it was too late. Their destination was a luxurious mansion on the outskirts of Paris, where the traitor was believed to be hiding. As they approached, they were met with resistance from armed guards. A fierce battle ensued, with Alexander and Élise fighting side by side to overcome their adversaries. In the chaos, they managed to infiltrate the mansion and confront the traitor, a high-ranking official who had been feeding information to the enemy. The confrontation was intense, and the traitor's attempts to escape were thwarted by Alexander's quick thinking. With the traitor captured and the documents in hand, Alexander and Élise knew they had struck a significant blow against the enemy's plans. But the mission was far from over. They still had to ensure that the plot would be fully dismantled and that the safety of their nations would be secured. As they left the mansion, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. The high-stakes auction had brought them closer to the truth, but the journey ahead was filled with uncertainty. Alexander and Élise were united in their resolve, determined to see their mission through to the end. The game of deception was nearing its climax, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of their countries depended on it, and Alexander was determined to ensure that justice would prevail. The high-stakes auction had revealed the true depth of the conspiracy, and now they had to dismantle it piece by piece. The night was far from over, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. But Alexander and Élise were ready to confront the forces that threatened their world. The dance of secrets had brought them together, and together, they would navigate the treacherous path to victory. Chapter 8: Allies or Enemies. With the traitor apprehended and the immediate threat averted, Alexander and Élise knew they couldn't afford to rest. Their mission had exposed a vast network of conspirators, and they had to dismantle it piece by piece. The fate of their nations depended on their success. As they regrouped at the safe house, Jacques laid out a map of Paris on the table. "Our next target is a chateau on the outskirts of the city," he explained. "It's a stronghold for the conspirators, and it holds vital information about their operations." Alexander studied the map, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to move quickly and efficiently. If we can secure the chateau and gather the evidence, we can bring the entire network down." Élise nodded in agreement. "But we must be cautious. The conspirators will be on high alert after our recent actions. We can't afford to make any mistakes." Their plan was simple but daring. Under the cover of darkness, they would infiltrate the chateau, neutralize any resistance, and secure the documents. It was a high-risk operation, but the potential rewards were worth the danger. As night fell, Alexander, Élise, and Jacques set out for the chateau. The journey was tense and silent, each of them focused on the task ahead. The moonlight cast long shadows over the landscape, adding to the sense of foreboding. Upon arriving at the chateau, they split into two teams. Alexander and Élise would enter through a side entrance, while Jacques and a small contingent of loyal operatives would create a distraction at the front gate. The plan was to draw the guards' attention away from their infiltration. As Alexander and Élise approached the side entrance, they moved with the precision and stealth of seasoned spies. The chateau's towering walls loomed above them, and Alexander could feel the weight of history and secrets within its stone confines. They managed to slip inside undetected, navigating the labyrinthine corridors with practiced ease. The interior of the chateau was a stark contrast to its imposing exterior, with elegant furnishings and priceless artworks adorning the walls. It was a reminder of the wealth and power that the conspirators wielded. Their destination was a hidden study deep within the chateau, where they believed the documents were kept. As they approached, the faint sound of voices reached their ears. Alexander signaled for Élise to stay back while he moved closer to eavesdrop. The voices belonged to two men, their conversation revealing the depth of the conspiracy. They spoke of plans to incite rebellion, of key targets and strategies. Alexander knew he had to act quickly to secure the evidence and stop the plot. With a nod to Élise, they burst into the study, catching the conspirators by surprise. A brief but intense struggle ensued, and Alexander's combat skills proved invaluable. Within moments, the men were subdued, and the study was theirs. As they searched the room, they found the documents hidden behind a false panel in the wall. The evidence was damning, detailing every aspect of the plot and implicating several high-ranking officials. It was more than enough to dismantle the network and bring the conspirators to justice. But their victory was short-lived. As they prepared to leave, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors. The guards had been alerted, and they were closing in fast. Alexander and Élise had to think quickly to escape with the documents. They made their way to a hidden passage they had discovered earlier, a narrow tunnel that led to a secret exit outside the chateau's walls. The passage was dark and claustrophobic, but it was their only chance of escape. As they emerged into the cool night air, they were met with the sight of Jacques and his operatives engaged in a fierce battle with the chateau's guards. The distraction had worked, but it had come at a cost. Several of their allies lay wounded or dead, a grim reminder of the stakes they faced. With the documents secure, Alexander and Élise joined the fray, their combined efforts turning the tide of the battle. The guards were eventually overwhelmed, and the chateau was theirs. But the victory was bittersweet, marked by the loss of brave comrades. Back at the safe house, they reviewed the documents and prepared to present their findings to the authorities. The evidence was overwhelming, and it would bring down the entire network of conspirators. But Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that their mission was far from over. As he looked at Élise, he saw the weariness in her eyes, but also the determination and resolve. They had come a long way, and their partnership had been forged in the crucible of danger and deception. They were allies, but the question of trust still lingered. "Élise," he said softly, "we've achieved so much together. But I need to know, are we truly on the same side?" Élise met his gaze, her expression earnest. "Alexander, I have made my choices, and I stand by them. My loyalty is to our mission, to preventing the chaos that would ensue if the conspirators succeed. I am with you, now and always." Her words rang true, and Alexander felt a sense of relief. They were in this together, and they would see it through to the end. The game of deception had brought them to this point, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The road ahead was uncertain, but their resolve was unwavering. The Allies had become more than just partners, they were a united front against the forces that threatened their world. And together, they would ensure that justice would prevail. The fate of their nations depended on it, and they were determined to see their mission through to the end. Chapter 9, The Final Gambit. The following days were a whirlwind of preparation as Alexander and Élise planned their final move against the conspirators. They knew they had to strike decisively and ensure that the evidence they had gathered would reach the authorities. The fate of their nations depended on the success of their mission. Their target was the enemy's stronghold, a heavily guarded fortress on the outskirts of Paris. It was here that the conspirators had gathered, preparing to execute their plans. The operation was high risk, but Alexander and Élise were determined to see it through. As night fell, they assembled their team of loyal operatives. Jacques had gathered a group of trusted allies, each willing to risk everything for the mission. They reviewed the plan one last time, knowing that there was no room for error. "Remember," Alexander said, his voice steady, "our objective is to secure the fortress and obtain any remaining evidence. We must also ensure that the leaders of the conspiracy are apprehended. Stay focused and watch each other's backs." Élise nodded, her expression determined. "We are ready. Let's finish this." Under the cover of darkness, they approached the fortress. The moonlight cast eerie shadows over the imposing structure, and the air was filled with a tense silence. Alexander's heart pounded in his chest as they made their way to the entrance. The first phase of their plan involved a coordinated assault on the guards stationed at the fortress. Jacques and his operatives created a diversion, drawing the guards away from the main entrance. With precision and skill, Alexander and Élise slipped inside, moving swiftly and silently through the corridors. The interior of the fortress was a maze of dimly lit hallways and hidden chambers. They encountered resistance at every turn, but their training and teamwork allowed them to overcome each obstacle. The sounds of battle echoed through the fortress, a testament to the intensity of their mission. As they neared the heart of the stronghold, Alexander and Élise found themselves facing the leaders of the conspiracy. The confrontation was intense, with both sides exchanging blows and gunfire. The room was filled with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the clashing of steel. In the chaos, Alexander managed to disarm one of the leaders and secure a set of documents detailing the final phase of the plot. The evidence was crucial, and Alexander knew it would be the key to bringing down the entire network. But the battle was far from over. The remaining conspirators fought fiercely, desperate to protect their plans. Élise's combat skills were put to the test as she engaged in a fierce duel with one of the leaders. Her agility and determination were unmatched, and she eventually emerged victorious. With the leaders subdued and the documents in hand, Alexander and Élise made their way to the fortress's main chamber. It was here that they discovered the true extent of the conspiracy: a vast network of informants, hidden caches of weapons, and detailed plans for inciting rebellion. The realization hit them like a tidal wave. They had uncovered a plot that spanned both nations, a web of deceit and manipulation that threatened to plunge the world into chaos. The gravity of their mission weighed heavily on their shoulders. As they prepared to leave the fortress, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The victory had come at a great cost, and he knew that their work was far from over. They still had to ensure that the evidence would reach the authorities and that the conspirators would be brought to justice. Back at the safe house, they reviewed the documents one last time. The evidence was overwhelming, and they knew it would be enough to dismantle the entire network. But they also knew that they had to remain vigilant. The conspirators had allies in high places, and the fight was far from over. As dawn broke, Alexander and Élise set out to deliver the evidence to the authorities. The journey was fraught with danger, but their determination never wavered. They knew that the fate of their nations depended on their success. The final gambit had been played, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The game of deception had brought them to this point, and they were determined to see it through to the end. Their mission had forged an unbreakable bond between them, a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Together, they had navigated the treacherous path of espionage, and now they were ready to ensure that justice would prevail. The road ahead was uncertain, but their resolve was unwavering. The fate of their nations depended on it, and they were determined to see their mission through to the end. The final gambit had revealed the true depth of the conspiracy, and now they had to dismantle it piece by piece. The night was far from over, but Alexander and Élise were ready to confront the forces that threatened their world. The dance of secrets had brought them together, and together, they would navigate the treacherous path to victory. Chapter 10: The Aftermath. The sun was just beginning to rise as Alexander and Élise approached the grand offices of the British Embassy in Paris. The weight of the documents they carried was matched only by the weight of the responsibility on their shoulders. The evidence they held would dismantle the conspiracy that threatened to plunge their nations into chaos. The ambassador, Sir Henry Pembroke, greeted them with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Monsieur Hawke, Contessa de Beauvoir, what brings you here at such an early hour?" Alexander handed over the documents, his expression serious. "We have uncovered a plot that spans both our nations, involving high-ranking officials and key figures in society. These documents contain everything you need to dismantle the network and bring the conspirators to justice." Sir Henry's eyes widened as he skimmed through the pages. "This is extraordinary. We will act immediately to ensure that these individuals are apprehended." With the documents in safe hands, Alexander and Élise knew their mission was complete. The ambassador assured them that the evidence would be delivered to the highest authorities in both Britain and France, ensuring that the conspirators would be brought to justice. As they left the embassy, the weight of their mission began to lift. The streets of Paris were coming to life, the city's beauty and vibrancy a stark contrast to the danger and deception they had faced. Alexander and Élise walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Élise broke the silence. "We did it, Alexander. We stopped the plot and ensured the safety of our nations." Alexander nodded, a sense of accomplishment washing over him. "Yes, but it came at a great cost. We lost many brave souls along the way." Élise's expression softened. "Their sacrifices will not be forgotten. They fought for a cause greater than themselves, and their legacy will live on." They reached a quiet park, where the morning sun cast a warm glow over the landscape. The tranquility of the scene was a welcome respite from the turmoil they had endured. Alexander turned to Élise, his expression contemplative. "What will you do now, Élise?" he asked. "Will you return to your life in high society?" Élise smiled wistfully. "I don't think I can go back to the way things were. This mission has changed me, and I realize now that there is still much work to be done. There are always threats to be faced and truths to be uncovered." Alexander felt a pang of sadness at the thought of parting ways with Élise. Their partnership had been forged in the crucible of danger and deception, and he had come to rely on her strength and intelligence. "I understand. I too have a duty to my country, and there will always be new missions to undertake." They stood in silence for a moment, the bond between them unspoken but deeply felt. Finally, Élise reached out and took Alexander's hand. "Thank you, Alexander, for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." Alexander squeezed her hand gently. "And you, Élise. Our partnership was one of necessity, but it became so much more. We achieved something remarkable together." As they prepared to part ways, Élise offered him a heartfelt smile. "Perhaps our paths will cross again someday. The world of espionage is a small one, after all." Alexander nodded, his heart heavy but hopeful. "Until then, Élise. Take care." With that, they went their separate ways, each carrying the weight of their experiences and the promise of a future shaped by their actions. The mission had forged an unbreakable bond between them, a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. The dance of secrets had come to an end, but the echoes of their deeds would resonate for years to come. Alexander and Élise had navigated the treacherous path of espionage, and they had emerged victorious. Their legacy was one of courage and determination, and they would continue to fight for justice in the shadows. As Alexander walked through the streets of Paris, he felt a sense of resolve. The road ahead was uncertain, but he knew that he would face whatever challenges came his way. The fate of their nations had been secured, and he was ready to continue his work as a guardian of the truth. The Georgian spy and the French Contessa had become legends in their own right, their names whispered in the grand salons and dark alleys of Paris and London. And though their paths had diverged, their shared mission had left an indelible mark on the world. The game of deception was never truly over, but Alexander and Élise were prepared to face it with unwavering resolve. Their story was one of triumph and sacrifice, and it would be remembered for generations to come. The end was merely the beginning of new adventures, and Alexander Hawke was ready to embrace whatever the future held. The world of espionage awaited, and he was determined to navigate its treacherous waters with courage and cunning. The legacy of the Georgian spy and the French Contessa would live on, a testament to the power of trust, loyalty, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The dance of secrets had ended, but the echoes of their deeds would continue to shape the world for years to come.